So I start.
Yeah, you
I
say
say,
that.
welcome to the
facial recognition.
facial
comedy.
recognition.
You want to do a test
Comedy.
facial
podcast.
recognition comedy podcast.
There we
yes?
go.
Yeah.
Facial recognition comedy podcast.
Okay.
Toy boat, toy boat, toy boat, toy boat, toy boat, toy boat, toy boat.
We're keeping this.
Yeah.
We're recording, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
sure.
okay. Cut all this.
And now. And action.
Hello and welcome to the Facial Recognition Comedy Podcast. I'm Baron Vaughn.
And I'm Fizza Dasani.
And I'm Paula Viganalin.
And I'm Zara Ali.
Oh, she broke
Welcome.
the pattern.
Sorry, I didn't know we were getting all theatrical with it, you know.
I don't know. It just happened.
Was that the pattern that
Natural.
happened? Yeah.
Everything you do is contagious.
Is that what it is? I'm very
Yeah.
theatrical.
Baron
It
took
is.
his headphones off. We all took our headphones off.
Yeah.
Oh, hey.
He's a
We're all just married
trendsetter.
Yeah,
People.
that's right. Trends.
You're trendsetter. Well, you're the most famous out of all of us in this
Am I?
room. So it's like we're just
Oh.
going to
For
emulate
sure.
everything that you do.
I was on your
Fame.
Wikipedia page, and I was like, I can't. We put notes together. I was like, I can't put this in the notes. It takes too long.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
My
Took him
wiki.
Too many pages.
That's
That's
too
much
many credits,
scrolling,
man.
I didn't even know I had a Wikipedia page.
Yes, you do.
Oh.
It's
You're
very
that
prolific.
famous.
I
Somebody
know.
else made your Wikipedia page.
I'm a big fan of you on
The internet
Grace and
decided.
Frankie.
Oh, yeah. See, that's what I'm talking about, people.
Lily Tomlin's son right here.
Yeah, Lily Tomlinson.
Yeah.
That's her real last name.
The child of Lily Tomlin.
That's right. The adopted child of a television mom, yes.
Is it on Gracie and Frankie?
Grace and Frankie,
Grace
yes.
and Frankie, yeah.
It's
Netflix
okay if you get the
original.
title
Yeah.
wrong. I don't
Sorry,
care.
Grace and Frankie.
I'm a big fan.
No, it's not a good
My-
title. That's why
you know
people
what?
mess
It's
it
not
up.
for our demographic, but my parents,
I'm a big fan.
my parents love that show. Everybody's parents love that show, and I feel like when I watch it, like I start relating too much to my parents, and I'm like, something's wrong here. Something.
Oh, you don't want to see things from your parents' shoes?
I just don't want. It's more of an acknowledgement within myself. Like, oh shit, I'm old now. Like I understand this thought process.
You get to learn all the tricks from Fonda. Like
That's true.
Season 1 when she had like the string pulling her face back, and I was like, that's.
Oh,
look,
yeah.
this-
Oh, that's a
sorry, I almost
trick.
knocked over Paula
That's a
V's water. I'm
big,
so excited.
It's
I'm
a big
so
Hollywood
excited.
trick.
She took
Like,
the
not
water
my
like,
water.
yeah.
I'm like,
she-
yeah. Jane Fonda's holding her face back, but I'm hydrating. That's how I'm doing it.
It's
Don't
the
take
same
my
thing. It's
tricks
true.
from me.
If you hydrate well, you ain't gonna need that
Yeah.
stuff in the.
Have you
I
learned?
Paula
Paula's
her
opening
bottles
my
for
bottle
her.
for me.
Uh-oh.
I have eczema.
Have you learned Hollywood tricks from Jane Fonda? Or
Definitely
anyone else
not.
on set? No, no.
Not. I mean, Hollywood tricks meanings what when you ask it.
Well, aside from put tape to pull your wrinkles back and stuff. What other Hollywood?
You know what? Something I actually, speaking of not wearing the headphones, there's a couple people on the show that don't watch the show.
Oh.
That's actually a tip for acting. If you get in a thing, don't watch it.
Really?
Well, that's
Gets in
easy
your
for a
head
lot
too
of
much,
artists,
right?
I think.
Well, the reason is because
'Cause-
it makes you think about how you look.
That's like when we were listening to the podcast and then got too self-conscious about
Yeah.
it.
Yes, it does make you self-conscious.
Also, when I said I have eczema, I want to clarify it was on my hands. That's all.
I love that was still on your mind.
Can
Yeah,
someone
because it
open
might have
my
been
water bottle
confusing.
for me?
Do you
Thank
all
Just like the
record your own sets?
yes,
Yes, I do.
Audio or visual or both?
sometimes both,
Both, but audio usually.
mostly audio. Yeah,
Same.
And
yeah.
now the question is, do we listen to it?
I listen.
Oh,
to
that's a
some.
different thing.
I listen to maybe half of that.
Oh, that's a lot.
I
Like
make a
it-
notation on the recording.
Yeah.
Like I do a thumbs up system
Oh,
that's
really?
smart.
or a meh.
That's smart.
How many H's does the meh have? Meh.
I have to find a system because there's some that I have to I need to go back and check for a good tag or whatever, and I keep forgetting.
I usually
Yeah.
grade mine like an A, B. If it's anything,
would
Very
grade yours?
Daisy of you. Very
if it's
brown.
if it's a C or under, I just throw it out. I'm like, I'm
Oh,
not
really?
even gonna I'll listen to it once, just find out what went wrong, and then I'm like, all right, I'm over this.
Do you delete them?
I delete it if it's complete garbage. Like if the audience wasn't there, if I know what the mistake was,
If it's not productive.
if it's not productive. But I'll hold on to it if it is something crazy. If it's a crazy heckle that I didn't handle the right way, or something if it's something that I actually need to go.
Out
back
of
Sounds
the
like there's a
norm.
lot of self-judgment. in
Yeah.
there.
I mean, I'm very good at self-judging myself. That is
She gives herself an A+ on that.
On that, yes. Double plus. Got it.
do you listen to yours or do you record still?
I do. I used to. I record pretty much every set. Do I listen to them is a different answer, which is no. And that's not necessarily true. I do listen to them because I was going to say that complete garbage. I hate to be there is no spoon, but in a sense, there is no such thing as a bad set. There is the set where you don't achieve your goal, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But sometimes it might mean that your goal for that set is different. I mean, this is like a retroactive kind of thing that I apply. If I didn't kill it the way I know a joke can work, or if there was a half-assed idea, then like, well, then maybe that's what I needed to experience this time, or I just needed to be able to say this out loud in front of people, even if they were staring at me, arms folded, hands,
Yeah.
heads working and fingers wagging. That's what happens, and that's what had to happen.
So it's always a productive experience, but for
Learning.
Zara, it's like it might not be productive to live it again.
Yeah.
in the-
yeah.
you
Like
know,
if
by listening
I
to the recording.
if I can learn anything additional from it, I'll hold on to it. If I'm not going to learn anything new,
You don't need to
from it,
re-experience the
It's like
trauma.
how
Like,
I deal
alright.
with men. If I
yeah,
can
exactly.
learn,
It's like, do I need
I'll
to
keep
relive
it for a little
this?
bit longer.
Keep
you know?
it.
I don't
Good.
want to hoard it.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be in it.
Are you self-critical?
Yes, incredibly self-critical. That's actually the problem that I continue to. I have this obsession with being original, and it's. I mean, it sounds cheesy to say, but it's like my note to myself is to make it plain, because what I'll do is I'll overwrite things because I'm trying so hard to be clever that I lose everyone and sometimes the point. I remember I had this joke. Do you know Mike Kaplan at all?
Yeah.
I've known Mike for, well, as long as I've been doing stand-up, which is 17 years. So I met him many years ago in Boston. And I remember I had this joke, and it's this story of when I was in England, and I was talking to my girlfriend at the time, and I was doing an impersonation of British slang, specifically the word oi.
Yeah.
And I was just saying it over and over and over and again.
What is oi? Is it just like a passing?
To
Like an
get someone's
exclamation, right?
attention.
Well, it means many things. It's
Oh,
very
okay.
versatile. It can mean like, hey, or like, what? What's this? Or why are you doing that? Or how's your mom? It can mean all these different
Yeah.
things, which is part of what I say in the joke. And I'm like, oi, 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 doing all the different intonations that I can think of. And in real life, this actually happened. A man who was walking in front of us that I didn't notice turned around and was like, yeah, what's up? And I was like, what's going on? He's like, you called my name. And I'm like, no, I don't know your name. And then he explained that his name was Oi.
He just walks around the world upset that people are saying oi.
Does he live in England?
He lives in
Oh,
England,
that's-
yes.
that-
He's
that's
British.
triggering.
I didn't do my
Ridiculous.
accent. But,
awful.
and I've been stuck with this joke for a decade.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what is funny about this. What are the different ways? And I've had 80 different endings to it. And one time I had this one where it was like, he's a white British man wearing all black, eye patch, cello case,
That's crazy.
like you do. And so I had this joke where I was like, and I think at that exact moment there were two Brits in New York talking about the word yo.
Yeah.
And then a black man wearing all white turned around like, yes, what's up? And he has a necklace of an eye. He's wearing it. And there was like all this different like things that you have to remember from the other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mike was like, there's way too much math in that joke.
Yeah.
Like by the time you get to the point,
Too many
everyone's
references.
forgotten the reference.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, but I was trying so hard to be clever. That's a joke I also just recently, I'm like, you know what? Put it to pasture.
Just retire it.
I've been,
Retire
I've
That is really funny, though.
hit myself
years
over the
of
head with this
trying.
joke for a decade. Maybe I need to let it go.
5 years from now, it's gonna hit you.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's gonna hit. You're gonna know exactly what to do with that joke.
Maybe.
It might
I'm calling
resurface.
it.
I feel like your sets are so original though, because you like incorporate like singing and like your movements are really different. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like
thanks,
you
Paula.
you're very dynamic, so it's like fun to watch. It feels very unique.
I appreciate that. Theatricality has always been my strong point.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm obsessed with writing.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I can get up there and literally say anything and make it work.
Yeah.
But if I am not expressing an idea,
Yeah.
about myself or the world, then what is the point?
yeah.
But your stand-up tends to be more theatrical because you have the theater background,
Yes,
right? So
yes.
you were a trained actor first, and then
Where were you trained?
what was that journey into comedy? Or
Well,
stand-up comedy?
I went to theater school at Boston University, which is where I also started doing stand-up. I kind of look at it like my foray into theater was actually me wanting to be a stand-up comic, but I didn't know that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I just saw people on TV being funny, and then I went towards theater because I was like, people on a stage saying things, it's the same, even though it's different. So I kind of wanted to be a comedian the entire time, but sort of went toward acting. And then when I was in theater school is when I actually got on stage at an open mic in Boston and did stand up.
Tight.
Because I didn't know that's what you had to do.
Yeah.
Did you get?
Go up on stage and talk.
Yeah,
That's
well,
it.
that you have to find an open mic, you know.
But you decided to go get a theater degree and all of
Exactly.
Which
and then,
serves you
and then
in this industry.
yes.
all
long ass Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
That's right.
Did you get like ragged by the other comedians for being an actor, like like a theatrical actor?
Yes and no. I mean, a lot of the comics that I was around didn't know that at all because a lot of them were in college as well. And so this open mic that I went to, it was called, it was called the Vault, Dick Doherty's Comedy Vault, which doesn't exist anymore. It was around the corner from Emerson College in Boston, where a buttload of comedians have come out of that school.
Oh, a buttload of everyone in the industry.
Exactly.
Do they have stand-up comedy as a major now?
I think they actually do. They actually
Wow.
might.
Stop. Terrifies me a
What does
little
that
bit.
curriculum even look like?
Well, think about
Is there like a Heckler 101 or something?
There's like dick jokes 102.
It's probably a bunch of
Like-
open mics you pay much more than $5 for.
Yeah.
You pay tuition for it.
Like when you
thousands of
graduate with that degree, do you just automatically get a paid spot at one of the clubs? Like what?
I'm not
like,
sure.
how
You ever
is-
heard of Eugene Merman?
Yeah, I love him.
He had a stand-up comedy major.
Really?
I don't know if he went to Emerson. I think he went to some school where you could design your own major.
Oh.
And
Yeah,
so
one of my
he
friends is doing
designed
that
a
right now.
stand-up comedy major in which I think he took like writing
Right.
classes and philosophy classes and then kind of combined that into one thing.
I could see how writing and philosophy all fits into a stand-up major.
He also does,
Actually,
he
I
does,
do
he does like
appreciate-
Star Talk now too, right? With Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Does
and
Eugene does?
I thought he did.
He's probably been on it. I don't know
oh,
if
he's been on it.
he's
Okay.
like the
Yeah,
official
but he does,
co-host.
like Bob's Burgers and
I
everything.
appreciate
Oh, yes.
being able to tailor your major specifically to one. Why is it one size fits all? You know, so I like that's really dope that he was able to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's kind of what my theater training was,
Yeah.
which is that, you know, I mean, there's a bunch of different ideas, if you will, schools of thought when it comes to acting, but all of them are just, all acting training is really Buddhism when it comes down to it. It's all about being present.
You know what? You're pissing off a lot of Catholic actors right now. And I just don't feel like
Sorry,
everybody that
Catholic
goes to the
actors.
church.
Speaking of Catholic, like the self-criticism, was that offensive? Do you feel like it's productive for you, or is it self-defeating?
Well, both. It depends on the times that you have a handle on it or not.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the self-criticism runs you, and sometimes you can, if you will, detach yourself from it and kind of look at it with an objective eye. Because that self-critical voice is almost, I think about anxiety like anxiety is our creative self
Yeah, it's
that
the
we've turned into,
maiden of creativity,
and we've turned it into a weapon.
Yeah.
To punish ourselves, you know. So it's kind of like we're sitting in bed having I'm slightly autobiographical, sitting in bed having an anxious sort of thing where you're like, oh man, but if I do this, then this is gonna happen, and that's gonna happen, and that's gonna happen. If you put that on the page, that's good writing.
Yeah.
It's good situations, but instead it becomes this
Well, the outlet,
fantasy.
it's like sort of a constructive outlet to put it into art.
It is exactly
Sort of where, because you get it out. It's like anything, it's a vent.
exactly.
So go to therapy or put it on paper or both. You can do both.
Well,
do it all.
that's recognizing that self-critical voice in oneself is to also recognize that anybody could have that voice.
Yeah.
So if you understand how it works for you, then it means that you understand how to create a person out of thin air that is a quote-unquote character if you're writing.
Yeah.
Or if you want to understand the motivations of somebody else in terms of doing a joke. Because sometimes that is like, what was this person? You know, you run into someone and they do it. I feel like there's a lot. That's what my oi joke is really about. Is I walked into a situation in which I have a little piece of information,
Yeah.
and so my anxious brain is the part of me that is trying to fill in the holes. That's what the joke is. What did I interrupt? What was this guy doing? Sort of thing. But I still have no idea.
So, like, do you identify the anxiety as part of your voice?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because it is my voice. It is the way that I think about things. And so if I can essentially act it out sometimes instead of live it out, that's the thing that helps me release it or have some sort of perspective on it that makes any sense. This got way more process oriented.
Yeah.
It's gotten very comedy technical.
That's all good though.
But it's also like how you just handle anything. Like I was literally talking to my therapist about this today, about having that anxiety and having it be like paralyzing, and like at what point do you decide to, you know, to be proactive and to like even calling it anxiety and calling that a part of your voice, it feels like negative. It's like there's
That's
you,
true.
and then there's like how you handle these things and how you like process these emotions.
You
Well,
give
you
it
were-
power if you name it sometimes.
Yeah.
You also talked about detaching, though. Detaching from the anxiety, sort of like observing it. Oh, this is what my brain's doing again. It's just something my brain does. But that takes a level of self-awareness. How did you get there? What was your process?
I mean, I'm not going to act like I'm there. Like it's just the place that I exist in. It's
Very
always,
process-oriented today.
Yeah.
What's going on?
but it's always, it's just one of them days. Don't take it personal. But it's, that thing is sort of, it's a being able to not judge oneself, if you will, about whatever feeling you're experiencing, if that makes any sense. So it's sort of like, I mean, an old teacher of mine used to say, beware having emotions about your emotions,
Yeah.
which is a
Judgment.
big, yes, because you get,
shame spiral.
you feel shame.
That's where
Then
I'm
you
at.
then you feel mad at yourself that you
tough.
feel shame.
Yeah.
Then you're annoyed that you're mad that you are shamed. Then it becomes entertaining that you're annoyed that you're mad that you feel shame.
Are you reading my Twitter feed right now? Is that, that's
Exactly.
Like
You
a
just-
It's
thread.
like the Russian doll of emotions.
That's absolutely true.
But that's what it's like. It's paralyzing because of that. Because you're just constantly thinking about thinking.
And it puts more walls, if you will, layers between you and whatever you were feeling originally, whatever the core feeling is.
Yeah.
So, like, do you separate intellect and emotion?
Yes and no.
Well, so and this
It's a cop out answer.
this is very and it's an interesting topic for me too because a lot of people have given me this feedback like, oh, don't be emotional, it doesn't make you look smart. And it's like, wait, hold on, can't you have intelligence and emotional thoughts at the same time? Doesn't one feed the other? So why
Absolutely.
is being emotional considered not a smart thing to do? You
Well,
know,
it's
like-
probably also a little sexism, whoever said that to
yeah,
you.
of course, you know.
Because
Definitely a
women
man
tend to
said
be
it
more
me,
naturally in
so.
tune with our emotions and programmed that way and conditioned. So it's
But I think like what indicates both into like I think there's what Fizz always talks about is the IQ and the EQ,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you can have emotions, but as long as you're like aware of them and able to like have the skills to process them, then that shows that you've like grown emotionally, right? Like that as long as you find like you're aware of what's happening and
Yeah.
you have like the coping.
I mean, the reason I even asked if you separate the IQ and EQ or the intellect and the emotion is because I feel like I was groomed to have, my intellect was groomed, but I had zero understanding of emotions. I couldn't identify it. I could even barely sit with it. Like, I'd feel like they'd make me die.
I mean, personally,
So-
I feel like that's a problem with this country in general.
Yeah.
Is that we're all taught that the intellect is superior to any other thing that could be going on.
Yeah, and that-
so it gives us kind of a egoic way of dealing with the world,
For
and
sure.
then we separate it from whatever our emotion is. I was reading this book the other day. It's called "The Surprise Purpose of Anger."
Ooh.
You ever heard of nonviolent communication?
Yes. No, my therapist is talking to me about right now.
So it's the person that came up with that. It's another book that he wrote.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And he said something to the effect of, I'm trying to remember because I brought this up for a particular reason. Good thing I remember things. It was about how your anger is essentially a need is not being met. When
It's
you're angry,
information.
a need, yes, it is information, but
Yeah.
he's talking about learning how to read it, because what happens is, he said that anger distracts us from the need because it makes us focus on the wrongness of others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes us start pointing fingers of, well, they
Yeah.
did and they, but instead of seeing like, well, what is it that I actually want, need, that isn't being met? And then how do you communicate that in a way that isn't like filled with all your projections or your
Yeah.
embedded emotions? Not that I am perfect at that. That's actually my biggest personal problem is like, I'm very self-aware, but the problem is the integration.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can drown under your own self-awareness, and that becomes its own version of anxiety.
I find it always comes back to you and like checking in with yourself, because I have I'm like going through the process of this with my therapist, the nonviolent communication, the projection, like even the way that I talk to her, I'm like, well, this thing happened, and reiterating what happened doesn't tell her how I feel. It's like it's completely detached from who I am. So like that's something that I think people in this country and people who seek accomplishment and external like need, they don't check in with themselves, and that's like that kind of stymies their accomplishments anyways.
Very true.
Like,
Yeah.
as in making them their own worst enemy.
Yeah, self-sabotage, not
Yeah.
understanding how to.
Well, that's what brought me into therapy. It was just like, why do I keep just breaking everything, like ruining everything. Like, why am I getting in my own way? That's what I felt like I was doing. And it was like, okay, all these, all this behavior,
I mean,
this dysfunctional coping.
that was another big theater note was like, get out of your own way.
Yeah.
Like you're, out of the head, get out of your head, out of your head and into the space. Somebody used to say.
I think being in your head sometimes like stifles your creativity too.
It can.
Like I've definitely been in like rooms where I'm in a room, I'm full of like people that I respect that are like amazing creative people, but I'm in my head, so I'm like, oh, maybe I don't belong here. Maybe I'm like, it's a little bit of the imposter syndrome too.
Yeah.
And that sets in. It's like, well, just go and be yourself. You're in the room for a reason. So like that's like my inside like conflict that I'm always having with myself. Like, all right, put all that stuff aside and just go and like be your creative self with ththese amazing creative people. And see what magic will ensue.
And you got to also, because I did this literally last night, what you said. I was in a room with at a show, and I was like, ugh. I always still feel that.
Yeah.
And then the problem is forgiving yourself, if you will, when you do feel that.
Not
because there's
judging
always
yourself or
not
judging
yourself,
yourself.
having emotions about your emotions.
Yeah.
So then it's kind of like that thing where it's like, oh, aren't I an adult? Why do I feel this way? Why am I almost 40 and I still go monsters when I go to sleep?
Well, it's like, it's not a flip of a switch, unfortunately. It's
Yeah.
such a process. It's such a gradual process, and that can be frustrating for result-oriented people.
And you got to be gentle with yourself, and all of these things apply to art.
I think also what Zara brought up was interesting too, because I think like the idea of like who deserves to be where and like people's worth. Like we have such strange perceptions and they're ill-informed and they're ignorant, and we always like assume that we don't have the same worth as other people, but you like never know what anyone's going through.
Absolutely.
Or like how long, like I always see people in comedy, I'm like, oh, they're doing so great. Like, why am I not doing as great? Not like comparing myself to specific accomplishments, but in general, I'm like, I gotta hustle, I gotta whatever. And I'm 2.5 years in. Like, I'm like, I need to chill the fuck out.
Well, it also stops you from taking stock.
Yeah.
Right? And seeing your own achievement to this point.
And
if you're comparing yourself to others all the
enjoying
time.
the process. I have to sort of get out of that because it's a very self-destructive perspective for me. The competition, the scoring, the ranking. Like I found that I need to only compare myself to my past self. That to me, that's the only comparison that I can handle, I think. And also like, that's why I've also sort of never seen anyone as above or below me. So even when it comes to like, okay, this person's had this or this person hasn't had this, it doesn't even occur to me to rank. Maybe it's because, like, also, you know what? I'm going to take that back. I was conditioned that way, and it's become a very self-destructive pattern that I don't want to participate in, personally. It doesn't work for me.
Interesting. It's kind of, I always think of these things like they're the demons, if you will. When people say, oh, I have my demons.
Yeah.
Or like possession in a sort of a weird way, where it's like these emotions, or these feelings, these ideas have almost like a control over you, as if a different person is inside of you making decisions and speaking sometimes.
Not your rational self.
But the irrational self, or the rash that you have. That
Just
is
on your
yourself.
hands, though, right, Fizza?
Yeah, just on my hand.
Just
I
on
just
your
want to
hands.
clarify.
There you go,
guys.
there
I
you
just want to
go.
clarify.
I liked what you have said before about how, like, I'm not phrasing it right. I think you phrased it better about how we're all like the same, like entity, kind of.
Oh yeah, like I just think of all of everything that ever exists as one big ass organism.
I really like that.
And there's
because
that perspective, and that perspective is what maybe some people call the concept of God, or the greater perspective or whatever. But I just think of everything as an operating system anyway.
Yeah, I like that because because it removes the worth from it, because you're all the same thing.
Yeah, if
It
someone else
removes
wins, then we all win.
Yeah, it's not like they deserved it more or anything. It's like it takes that out of it, the ego.
Yeah, well, also it's just like, in fact, it's beyond even not being affected by it. It's just like someone else's success is all of our success.
Yeah.
Well, but that's very the opposite of what we are conditioned to. I heard this podcast recently. This woman who is she is a scientist, and she consults with all these different businesses around the world to basically help them motivate their workforce. because of course every employer is like, I would like to make more money this year than last year. She's like, okay, well, that's not going to motivate anyone.
Yeah.
Like, bottom line doesn't make people get out of bed in the morning. And she told this metaphor. And I don't know if this was a person that she studied with or just another study that she had, but this person who was, I think, a sociologist, studied these chickens, because chickens it's really easy to measure their productivity. How many eggs were laid, right? So then there was a generation of chickens that was together, and then he separated the super chickens, if you will, the ones that were very productive, and put them in their own flock. And then let the ones that were not as productive be their own flock, and the ones that were super productive be their own flock. Came back after a couple generations. The flock that wasn't as productive was doing great.
Wow.
So productivity went through the roof. They were like fat and healthy. They were just doing all their things, right? And then he went to the super chickens, and they were all dead
Because they killed each other.
because they pecked each other to death.
Wow.
And this is a metaphor for pecking order. And then she put this into this, we are conditioned to compete with each other at all times.
Oh my
We peck with each other. We peck at each other in school to get the best grades. We peck at each other after we leave into college to get in the best college. Then we're in college, we peck at each other to get into the best jobs. Then we're in the jobs, we peck at each other to get promotions. So we're always taught this lesson of my success is dependent on someone else's failure.
Yeah, there's this concept of scarcity.
Yes,
Like there's
scarcity
not
model.
enough success to go around, and that's just a narrative. That's just a belief.
But it's a belief that makes capitalism do it, so it's
Yeah.
kind of constantly we have to
crazy.
fight against that with British accent.
resources.
Constantly we have to
But,
fight
I mean,
against
oi,
it.
Oi, we gotta
Oi!
fight!
Oh, we gotta fight against it, right? That's as much as I
I will
got.
say this: my most intelligent friends, like the ones who are like successful, did well in school, like did everything they were supposed to do, like at the top of their companies, lawyers, whatever. They're constantly fighting with each other. I mean, it's like a friendly fight, but for decades it's been going on, and it's like, all right, well, let us dumb people we're gonna go have fun and drink and have brunch. You guys figure out your drama.
Is
you
that
know?
your
Not dumb.
is that your
No.
background is law?
No.
Okay,
No,
good.
but it's like, there's always like this divide between like the very highly intellectuals and then like everybody else who just wants to like, all right, I'm done with work. I'm just going to have fun and like,
Leave work at
I don't know.
yeah,
work.
leave work at home. And there's like, I always find like, that's just what I found. So I really relate to that, like that experiment with like the super chickens versus like the not as productive chickens. Like
I have a different experience from my Caltech friends. I feel like, and it might be because we experienced like a lot of trauma together and that like bonded us closer, but I found that they were like very empathetic. Like I feel like maybe it's because they reached like a level of security within themselves where they didn't feel like they had to compete. I don't know.
I mean, that's sort of, I think, what it comes down to. So, like, before, I think I was taught to motivate myself by the comparison and beating myself up. And that's the voice I internalized. That's why I'm also very self-critical and I'm trying to, like, work through it. But, like, I found now it's just better for me to be inspired. If I can be inspired, if I can find something that excites me, then to me, that's the best way I found to push myself at this point.
I forget that we're supposed to do that with everything.
Yeah.
Like there are large parts of my life I realized today where I'm not super excited about it. And I was like, I just had an epiphany. I was like, what the fuck am I doing?
Like what?
Like with school, I'm getting my PhD right now at USC and it's not that I don't like it. It's that I don't have the right mentality about it. I'm always like scraping by and I'm always like feeling guilty about not getting enough work done. But I'm like, but I actually like the work. Like, why do I have this anxiety about it? Like, I should be excited and enthused,
Well, it's because that anxiety maybe
Yeah.
has been taught to you as a work ethic.
Yeah.
As synonymous with work ethic.
Yeah.
Take two. Because that anxiety has been taught to be synonymous with work ethic.
Wow, that's a beautiful way of saying it.
Yeah, it's the first time I said it.
Amazing.
that is I feel like that's spot on because we're taught to be like the more stressed out you are, the more successful
Yeah.
you are. You must be doing well if you've got a lot of things on your
If
plate.
you're not sleeping, if you're not taking care of
like,
yourself.
dude, no.
And scientifically, that has been disproven.
Yep.
right? But
Because
we're
what is it?
constant-
Cortisol is the stress chemical?
Yeah.
It blocks your ability to remember things
Yeah.
and to learn things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the fact that we have made education in general a stressful experience is the opposite of what should be happening.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it's like, are people even retaining information in school unless you're like, be in undergrad at least?
I
even
haven't
at work.
retained
Yeah.
80% of the stuff I crammed into my brain in college, like the day before finals. I don't remember any of that shit. I aced the final, but I don't remember shit.
Whereas
Yeah.
if you were
You know?
excited
All I-
about the material, then that would be a
Then
different
you
thing.
remember,
All I
yes.
learned was that like I can do it. I'm like all I learned was like I can fucking do whatever I need to fucking do.
Yeah.
Well, I can't even do it anymore. I don't think I have the mental capacity or the attention span now to like cram that amount of information into my mind and be quizzed on it the next day.
But
Like
you-
I
I
think-
can't. I don't think
Well,
I
the
can.
next
I
day,
have like
yeah.
a core belief that everybody can learn anything given the amount of time that they need or like the learning tools.
Yeah. I mean, I think the mind's flexible, and in any circumstance, I think you'll figure out what to do, what you need to do.
Well, I also think that like it depends on what you think learning is.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in England, just to bring that back from that Oi story, we had this teacher who he just said this as an aside, and I never even had considered this because I grew up in the States and had no other experience of education, where he was talking about the tutor system versus the professor system. And he was saying something about like how British universities are like tutor system, which is more Roman, and then American universities are the professor system, which is more German, which is that a person gets up and professes to say,
Yeah.
these are the pieces of knowledge you need to know. Now that I've told them to you, prove to me that you understand it, as opposed to the tutor system in which they're always asking you questions.
Yeah.
It's you're going to figure out what you want to do, and then I'm going to come and poke holes in it so you can learn how to defend your
Yeah.
thing and kind of have your own perspective, if you will.
That's oh God, I love that.
That's like in India, like I had to tutor my cousins when I would go back. They're like, "You're the science one. Teach them photosynthesis." And
You're
like,
the science one.
So like they would have me like help the like younger kids.
You were the science one in your family, also.
Well, and my mom's side is
Yeah.
like wild, but my dad's side is like I'm the
Punjabi
least
Everyone's
science.
science
No,
one.
Cindy.
Cindy.
The Cindy side, my cousin's a race car driver. The other, I don't know what half of them are doing, but so they had like wild. So like I would go and teach them the thing, and they were like, "No, we have to memorize the sentences. You're not teaching us the sentences. You're teaching us the concept." And that's the
And to me, the concept's way more important.
yeah, of course, that's learning.
Unless your whole system is based on testing, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, which it is. Like it's cutthroat there. To
Our
get
system
into
is
the-
based on testing too.
Yes, it
Our
is. No
education's-
child left behind.
Yeah.
The worst idea
Yeah.
of the last 100 years.
I can like for me to remember concepts like photosynthesis, like I have like a hazy memory, but like I have to go to Wikipedia or I have to Google it. I literally have to Google things that I learned that I aced on tests, but I just don't
But that's just
remember
how
them.
memory
that's
works.
why-
You can't maintain that number of
Exactly.
concepts in your mind, and
Yeah.
it's been years since then.
Yeah.
So why would you be expected to?
I was going to say that's why I really appreciate when majors are tailored to the individual, because it just you're learning about stuff you're excited about.
Did you hear about this? Man, I think it's Finland, maybe? They're doing this crazy experiment with what is their version of high school. It might just be called high school. I don't know anyone from Finland. In which they essentially create, I forget what the name of it is, but it's sort of like field of interest sort of study, where it's instead of like, oh, you're going into your junior or senior year and you're still studying math, English, whatever the heck. It's like you choose a course called shopkeeper. And so they teach you all the different...
like apprenticeship almost.
Yes, and they teach you like how... They teach you math, they teach you, like how to... basically like ring things up, how to run a store, how to have like these personal skills of how to deal with not only customers but vendors and stuff like that. So you kind of pick an area of study, and then they teach you all the different things you need to know to do that. And then the kids who, if you will, they didn't know they needed to know math this well.
Yeah.
But now that it's kind of has almost an autobiographical, I mean, that's what we do with stand-up.
Yeah.
Anything that's happened to us in an autobiographical sense sticks with us.
Yeah.
But when it's about regurgitation, it's gone.
Yeah.
Unless you have some sort of autobiographical reason to remember that
Yeah.
information.
Well, you have practical experience for it. So that apprenticeship kind of I guess method would be helpful, right? So at least people realize like, oh, this is what I need math for.
Yeah.
This is why I need to be nicer to people because you know, it could affect my money and how I pay my bills and all of that.
Do they do like you take multiple field of interest classes, or is it like your niche in one?
I forget how it works, but I think it actually is geared to sort of help them get ready to pick what job it is that they want to do.
So they're exposed to like a number of them.
And you can,
That's
you
good.
can kind of switch around, I think,
Yeah.
and then study something that you didn't think you would be
Yeah.
interested in. Oh, astronaut. Now I'm going to need to know all these different things to lead towards that path. But I think it's a really fascinating thing. It's less about the one size fits all.
Yeah.
And we shit on apprenticeships and vocational schools and all that stuff for some weird
What's the
reason.
most efficient
It
education?
really is. I don't know why we just go like, no, you have to
People
prove
make
it.
money.
I
Those people
actually-
make real money.
I-
and they're
actually-
covered by unions and all of that too.
But they
so-
actually don't make as much money. Like, so I was talking to my roommate about like debt, like student debt, and the people who have, like just a little bit amount of debt are able and go to like college are able to like they're the ones who don't pay it off as much. But the people who have a lot of debt end up getting these like bigger jobs with like med school, like whatever, pay it off. So like the vocational people, those people kind of fall under like they're not earning as much. They don't have as much earning power, so they're the ones that like struggle with it as well. Yeah. So I think like it's good solid jobs that like people need to have filled, but I don't think they actually earn as much as, you know, the
Well, I wonder
higher,
if it was more
unfortunately.
normalized, if that would be different.
Yeah.
Because that still kind of speaks to hiring practices. Because people are more likely to hire someone that has a degree in the
Right.
thing than someone who's worked at the company the whole time
Yeah.
and really knows how it works
Yeah.
for some reason. That
Yeah.
experience is different than, oh, but they went to this Ivy League school, so I trust them more for some
Yeah.
reason.
I always think of Ivy League schools as brand names.
They are.
They are.
They're 100%.
They definitely
it's
are.
your network.
Yeah.
It's like that's all it is.
Unless you are a person who still struggles at that place. I know a buttload of people who went to Ivy League schools that never felt like they fit in there. And then in the, after they graduate, they are not as able to take advantage of all that
The
sort of
network.
alumni network stuff
Yeah.
because they weren't in whatever club or, social strata or gender or race they had to be when they were in school to take advantage of all that stuff.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, you really
Talk
have
about
to-
someone that all of you know, but I'm not going to say
Yeah.
this person's name.
I mean, it's when you're in that place, you need to like completely immerse yourself into it. I think that's how you get the advantages of it. I mean, I have friends like that too that went to Ivy League schools, but they were just in their own, alienated self, and and that's hard, because like you go into so much debt for those of us who didn't get free rides or didn't have parents paying for it and stuff, and that's a sad situation too, right? Like, it's just like. It goes back to our previous discussion where it's like, just get out of your head. Stop, get out of your head and go do the thing.
And
Like
that's a
enjoy
hard-
where you're at.
Hard thing. Like even
Yeah.
like going to theater school, it's only in the last 10 years that I've only started to understand what it is I learned in theater school because I was freaking 18.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
kind of like, hey, 18-year-old, here's the most complex characters ever written. Figure it out. Tennessee Williams did. Now it's your turn. Like, I don't have any life experience.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's what's weird about.
It's so hard to relate to Tennessee Williams at 18. Really,
That is a truth.
Honestly,
That
I
is a
can
truth.
relate to the material now, having lived life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, I get it now. Even like Shakespeare, I'm able to relate
Yes.
to the stuff now
Once you
way
translate
better.
it.
Well,
way
I
better
think
than
that
high school.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm kind of I'm like a Shakes head.
Yeah, he shakes head.
I'm a big Shakespeare
What's your
fan.
favorite?
Yeah.
My favorite play?
Yeah.
Julius Caesar.
Oh.
Julius Caesar's my favorite play because it's mafia shit going down.
Specifically, 'cause
There's
of
like
that.
a lot of mafia shit going down in like all of the
Most
plot
of those
lines.
plays. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
What's your
Julius.
I mean, I like A Midsummer Night's Dream. I like.
like it
this-
magical?
Yeah, I like the magical stuff.
Someone's here. It's Dave
Oh,
Waite.
Yeah, it's our next guest.
Hey, it's Dave Waite. How you doing?
Yeah, but
That's my version. That's my
I
version.
recently had to. I had to. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Cut all this out.
Now we're keeping it.
No.
Dave Waite interrupted Baron Vaughn's podcast.
See you, man.
Trying to get more time. No, I'm kidding.
Why don't you sit down and wait? All right.
He's our next
Like
our
your
week,
last
our
name,
episode the week after this.
Or maybe 2 weeks. We'll see.
So yeah.
That is yet to be determined. What were you saying,
We were
Zara?
talking about Shakespeare. I had to, for acting class, the coach, like, he was forcing me to challenge myself, do something outside of my casting. So I did Lady Macbeth.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, this fucker, like, what am I going to do? Like, I can't relate to this evil woman. And then I got into it and I'm like, okay, I know crazy psycho ass bitches like this. Like, I could understand how someone would be a down ass bitch and, like, you know, want
Ride
the
or die.
Yeah, ride or die. Want the
Yeah.
king killed so her man can take the position.
But
so
it was
she
not for her man. It was for her.
No,
but she's
I mean,
a woman.
but like through her man, you
Yeah.
know, it's
No,
like
I
she
get it.
believes in her man, but she knows she's smarter than her man. So she's like, all right, how do I become queen?
The
You know?
Beyonce
That
of
is
her
true.
time.
Exactly.
That is
So
true.
I
Not
like I
bad.
had to bring it
Cutthroat.
down, and I also had to relate to it from my own experiences at like 16 or 18 when I was going through my initial thing with Shakespeare. It's like, this is bullshit. But now as an adult, I'm like, oh wow, Shakespeare was.
I also think
Dope.
that we're taught it badly in general.
I do agree with
We're
that.
taught it
too.
in an English class, and
Yeah.
it's all about the language and the meter and
Yeah.
scansion. And I'm like, that's
The
not what
iambic
that's
pentameter
literally
and
not
all
what
of that.
Shakespeare wanted.
Yeah.
My English
Yeah.
teacher was like super dope, and she had us watch the Romeo and Juliet from like the 70s, and then
Oh, yeah.
also Romeo cross Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah. We did that
That
too.
shit was fire.
We watched
Baz
that in
Luhrmann.
our English
Love
class.
that shit.
Oh, but you were in IB too.
Yeah, I did IB too.
We were in a similar.
International
Were
Baccalaureate
you IB as well?
for the
Yeah.
people. I'm like, no comment.
Okay. Did you get kicked out of the IB program?
I had
wonder if
some.
that was part of
Yeah,
the
I had some. I
curriculum
had
No,
some.
this was like 8th grade.
You had some, so there
yeah.
was an incident.
It was
I had some
literally
IB.
recent.
I had some.
scandalous.
That's irritable bowel syndrome. I had
Okay.
IBS. I took English IBS in class in high school. No, I did IB and AP and honors, and
Yeah.
it depended on the subject. And it actually, something we were talking about before about like when teachers suck. So it's like certain teachers, even if they weren't. I remember being in a physics class, and it was like maybe physics AP or something. And the teacher sucked, and I learned nothing.
Yeah.
And then I dropped out of that and went to regular physics and learned a lot.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that teacher was more engaging.
It really
Yeah.
is a teacher.
It's bad teachers, bad bosses that really kind of make you, it's like they kind of force you into these bad situations, right? So but when you're a child or when you're younger, like you don't know. You don't know that it's the bad teacher.
And you have no choice.
Yeah, and then we're in a society, we're taught to like internalize all of it and think that there's something wrong with us.
Yeah.
And yeah, we got to get out of our heads, you know?
Yeah, and I mean sometimes the curriculum does not match the teacher or does not match the students. So it's just I don't know. Everyone's reading the same stuff based on someone else's outline, and
sometimes the teachers are racist.
yeah, well,
That happens.
That
Wait,
happens
what
in
happened?
America.
I had like
Oliver.
multiple. I had one teacher. I presented some book that had dealt with immigration, and she was like, "So, with your experience as an immigrant," and I was like, "I was born in Texas. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?" And then I had another teacher who like marked me off.
this was in Utah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had another teacher.
What part of Utah?
I went to high school in Salt Lake City, but I lived 20 minutes away in West Jordan, which is
Oh,
so
yeah.
like, yeah. Are you familiar?
Well, I'm from Vegas, so I know Utah.
Oh yeah, we would go to Vegas all the
Yeah.
time. But yeah, so like until like high school, I was like in the suburbs, and I still like live there. And then I had another teacher who like took points off because I didn't understand specific Bible references, and she was like, "Well, everybody needs to know these. It's part of English." And I was just like, "I don't."
That wasn't written in English.
I was like, I should have said that. I should have said that.
That's crazy.
And then she'd also only confiscate
real
the
talk.
Mexican girl's phone. So I don't know. I just did not like her.
Wow. Yeesh.
Always good. That is a big thing. Actually, just saw this thing the other day because I have a small child of color. And
You're a father?
I am a father, yeah.
Ooh, we should talk about your father finding story.
My
as well.
father finding.
But you can talk about your kid.
Well, I mean, they're kind of combined in a sort of a way. I'm still trying to figure out how to talk about this on stage. Even
How old's your child?
he's 18 months old.
18 months.
Yes, so
That's
he's
a cute age.
He's
fresh.
incredibly cute. But also,
That's a new ass baby.
He's no, he started because he can run around
He's
and
almost
jump.
toddler. He's almost
and,
at
No, he
toddler.
is a toddler.
Or at 18 months, they're considered toddlers.
I think it has to do with. I mean, the
their
word
mobility?
toddler is about how they walk.
the mobility, right?
Yes, and
okay.
he walked early. Like he walked at like 9 months.
Whoa.
Yes, apparently
That's
that's
very
very early.
early.
Some kids don't walk until they're 18
You better
months.
watch out.
Yeah.
He might be running away as soon as
No, he's very, very physical. He's very connected to his body.
Yeah.
But I just Rianne and my wife sent me this thing about when it is that kids learn racism. And I was like, what? Like, there's been a study, and it's pretty damn young. And I was like,
how young?
I think it's as young as 2 or 3.
Wow.
Is when they start to exhibit racial preferences.
That's when you get your dolls and stuff, and all of you get your toys. You see colors on TV and stuff.
And just interacting with people.
But it's also like at the age that they're allowed to that they start walking and stuff, they have to like tribalistically, you have to like be worried so if they see someone outside the tribe, they have to like know to come back to you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Tribalistically. That was my nickname in high school.
That's
Tribalistic.
Was it really?
No. I just like the way it sounds.
that was almost Childish Gambino's name.
Yeah,
You never know.
yeah. He's adultish.
I'm
now.
sure someone got that on the
That's
Wu-Tang
what
generator,
I was saying.
name generator.
No,
yeah.
he did get that on the Wu-Tang generation.
Tribalistic?
No, Childish Gambino.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
that's
That's
where
a
he
true
got it
story.
from.
But I'm
Yeah.
saying someone else got tribalistic.
Yeah. That sounds like a Wu-Tang.
No, there'd be another word. It'd be like, tribalistic jelly or something like
I
that.
actually got my name from the Wu-Tang name generator.
I got it
Is it
too.
Dasani?
Fizza Dasani.
Oh, Fizza.
my legal name, my birth name.
I'm shaking my head no for the listeners.
I
Wait,
do want to know.
can we talk about his dad?
Yeah, the father finding.
Oh yeah,
story.
no, I've met my dad a couple years ago. I'm 38. At the age of 36, I met him in New Mexico, which is where I was born, which is where he lives. I actually made a little documentary about it. So if anybody has Amazon Prime,
Yay.
it's up there. It's called Fatherless, and it's our TV doc, so it's like 44 minutes long.
Go on, go watch it.
But the whole point of it was that, like, I am the fatherless black child, right? This is a trope, a stereotype, but I also am nothing like what I have been told I'm supposed to be like. So it was a combination of wanting to break those assumptions that people project, but then also, in a way, own the title at the same time. Like, this is what has happened to me. And from a personal perspective, like it's very Hollywood. I had to like make a project to force myself to do something that is actually for my soul. Because I wouldn't have done it if someone who was paying me money wasn't like, where is it? We need it.
But then you have to force this like emotionally grueling thing on yourself,
Yes,
right? Because
yes.
you're dealing with abandonment and like all this stuff, and you're probably triggered to like, your childhood and a lot of that too.
Well,
right?
a lot of that has happened post the meeting. Because
Wow,
in a
okay.
sense, I was kind of deer in headlights because I was, as an old teacher of mine used to say, I was feeling so many things that they canceled each other out. So I was like,
It's like the Burns thing.
which Burns
On The
thing?
Simpsons, they had
Never heard of it.
It's a great show. They had Mr. Burns go in for a checkup, and they're like, "You have everything," so they're all just canceling each other. It's like fitting all these bugs through a door.
Great joke, of course. But yeah, it was like that, where it was kind of like, and if you watch it when I meet him, I'm very present is the only way I can put it, because I was thinking about, what am I going to feel? What am I going to think? What am I going to, and then suddenly he's walking at me and I'm just like, okay, just look him in the face and talk. But I was kind of, fumbling around
That's great that the external pressure of the documentary pushed you to get sort of something that was so healing.
yeah. And then the majority of the healing has happened after that. Like, as well as the trigger stuff, as well as learning the things that I actually am angry about that I thought I did not care about, and things that have come up that, and also just the idea of like, now I care about this person. So like, now I want to know what he's doing or talk to this person. We still are at this level where we're still kind of at a, how's the weather sort of a conversational
You're like
level.
getting to know each other.
Yeah. And,
Ease into it.
I'm living my own life. He's living his own life. So it's sort of like we're catching up. But
And
it's,
how long after was this reunion, essentially?
what do you mean, how long after?
Well, I mean, when did he leave? Had you ever met him before?
No, I never met him.
Okay.
He left before I was born.
Wow.
So my mother, the story that I got, and this is kind of part of the reason I made this documentary too, was to finally find out what happened. Because as you would expect, this was incredibly painful for my mom.
Yeah.
So she never talked about it ever. But that also trickled into never talking about the past
Yeah.
ever. To the extent where I don't know where my mom was from. Like, I didn't know where she was born. Stuff like that. She actually didn't find out where she was born until she was older because she just made this assumption. And then my grandmother was like, "No, you were born in New Mexico." She thought she was born in a military base in Germany
So this
because
is
that
a
was
historical behavior that's passed down between generations.
exactly. So it's like we didn't talk about the past so much that I
Because you
didn't even know we
didn't
weren't
talk about
talking
your
about
feelings, right? 'Cause
We didn't talk about our
You don't want to
feelings.
talk about the past because the past was bad and it was sad, and let's not talk about that because feelings will come up.
And that's
So,
the language, was to just avoid
Yeah.
what's painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that I had rode that horse for as long as it could gallop, and it was time to.
When did you break the cycle?
When did I break the cycle? I don't know if it's one moment.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of an ongoing thing where it's like, because I'm still figuring out which pieces of me are still stuck in the cycle.
Yeah.
And which pieces of me are all twisted up and mangled because they were in the cycle. You know, like it being literally a laundry cycle where you pull out the socks and they're like wrapped around the pants, and you're like, oh goodness, that's my self-worth and my shame. Just
Tied
kind
together,
of
yeah.
So I got to unravel those and then put them in the damn dryer and hope I have enough quarters.
I
love
hope you didn't lose a
analogies.
sock.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what this metaphor means
Oh
anymore.
wait, which one's the sock, the worth, or the?
Exactly.
Or-
Which
yeah.
one's the sock? Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
you
right.
get it.
Viewing and listening audience. Which one's the sock?
How has this impacted your relationship with your child?
Well, a lot, because I didn't have a model. You know, I don't have a go-to example that wasn't on television about how to be. But clearly, you know, any TV show is resolving whatever problem there is in 30 minutes. So I'm like, yeah, I'm just like, when he has a problem,
I mean,
all right, when we get to the second act, kid.
What did Bob
I mean,
Saget do?
you did it. You did it in 44. So
Yeah, yes, exactly. So, and there's a lot of things I wish I could have gone deeper in, like especially my mom's story. I didn't get to talk enough about what happened to my mom and how she dealt with all of this stuff and how it kind of manifested in all these other behaviors, especially with her relationship with me, because these are the kinds of things that make someone an addict. And I'll leave it at that.
Oh yeah.
is she
Yeah.
opening up more to you now that you've met him?
Oh, well, my mom and I kind of, when I was in college, we had a come to Jesus moment, you could say, in which she approached her sobriety, and she's been sober since. And then I was in a theater class. I had an acting exercise that made me switch how I felt about my mom.
Oh wow.
I'll tell you if you want to know. This is a really
Yeah.
intense thing.
You had a breakthrough in acting class.
Yeah,
That is
so
the most Hollywood thing I've ever heard.
Thanks, I
But
guess.
also, I've said this too, and someone's like, "Wow, you are now consumed by Hollywood."
But not a Hollywood acting class, a theater school
yeah,
acting
yeah,
class.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's this guy. This is how theater school this is. There's this guy's name's Augusto Boal.
No.
All right, he's a Brazilian theater performer, and he wrote a book called Theater of the Oppressed, which I highly recommend. It'll apply no matter what. What this dude did was travel around Brazil into communities in which they were experiencing a lot of oppression. Then he would get a bunch of different people in that community, interview them about their lives, and create a piece of theater with those people about what they were experiencing, and was so successful at that he was actually exiled from the country of Brazil. So, yeah.
There's also that documentary where he
Augusto Boal?
No. There's a different guy who made a documentary in like the Philippines or something where there were these like there was a lot of like genocide and stuff, and he made the killers reenact their murder. What is it?
Oh, yeah. I haven't heard of that.
That's similar, like to recreate the emotion and the pain and like
Yeah, and it's kind of like
reconsider-
a psycho, almost like a psychotherapy kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Oh, it was done as therapy, not entertainment.
No, this was a documentary, but it
Okay.
was to like make the killers, the executioners view, because they had to like reenact the murders that they committed and like to view it from the victim's perspective.
Now, that's
Yeah.
exactly what this happened in this theater class.
Yeah.
We were lined up in two lines
Yeah.
across from each other. I was in the line that was being instructed. So she was like, look at the person across from you. Imagine a time that you were oppressed. And I thought of a experience with my mom in which we got into a big fist fight when I was a kid. And so I was looking at this person and was putting my mother onto her. And then our teacher said, now reenact the body. Reenact physically how you felt in that moment. And so this person staying, and I started to kind of shrink and like cover my face. And then she goes, now become the oppressor and become into their body, right? So then I kind of stood up into this aggressive stance, if you will. I was my mom. And it was the first time that I realized, I just had this thought when I got into her body, which was, she's afraid. And it had never, ever
Wow.
occurred to me that my mother was a person who's having all kinds of feelings and was afraid of what she was doing in a way where she maybe didn't know how to do anything differently.
Yeah.
And so it kind of
That's huge.
started this opening of,
You
because I had like
empathy.
written off my
You
mom.
finally had empathy for your mom.
That's exactly what the whole point of that
Yeah.
was. And
Yeah.
so I had, kind of put her in a drawer, if you will, emotionally. And in this moment, I was like, oh my goodness, like she has been through a lot. And it sort of started her and I talking. At the same time, she was becoming sober. And it started her and I talking in a new way. And then my great-grandfather died, and that was hilarious, but not really.
What is happening?
My great-grandfather died. This is the man who my great-grandparents raised me until my mom came and got me when I was 6. She had to finish college. She was 19 when she had me. And then she came and got me. We lived in New Mexico for 1 year, then moved to Las Vegas, Nevada. Anyway, my sophomore year of college, my great-grandfather dies. My mother calls me to tell me he's dead and there's already been a funeral. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, I found out because a family friend called to find out why we weren't there, which started to open up all this weird stuff between my grandmother and her brother, which I did not know. And that's why when my grandfather died, his son, Uncle
You.
Charles, who is no longer with us, went and had a funeral and sold things from the house and never called his own sister, my grandmother.
Wow.
And that started to open up all this weird crap
Family
that's in the
shit,
family
man.
that no
Wow.
one talks about. And stuff that I think about now, but my grandmother and her brother are both dead. So all I have is like, psychics.
Man,
much
that's
crazy
so
stuff.
much stuff.
I'm so glad we could get into this at the end of the
Wow.
podcast.
Yeah, I know. It's at the end. Wait, can
I
we?
only said you because you pointed at yourself, and I was trying to understand who was who. And also, I have eczema in my hand. Just I had to
Never heard
let
that.
you know.
Never heard that.
Okay, so we do have to wrap up, but
Yeah.
this is super
feel like
fascinating,
we
and now
have
I'm
to
gonna watch your
get you back.
documentary. Yeah, we got to get you back.
We got to get you back on here because this is you've now uncovered the soap opera that is the Vaughn family.
I know.
That is my life.
Yeah, and I feel like
It's like a telenovela.
Can we get
Yeah.
a family tree?
No, because I
fair.
don't even have one. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know who is related to. Like, I went to Des Moines to do comedy, and my grandfather, my mother's father, lived in Des Moines, and I hadn't talked to this dude I hadn't seen him since I was like 8. And I went. This was a couple years ago. I went to Des Moines, and I was in the middle of the show. I was like, "Hey, is my grandfather here?" And there was no response. I'm like, I don't know. I just maybe he saw my name on a poster and then came. And then after the show, I called my mom. I'm like, yeah, where's Granddad live? She's like, oh, he's dead. He died like 2 months ago. I'm like,
Oh, shit.
thanks for telling me.
my God.
And that's how my family works. Do. That's how my family works.
Sing
We're a
it.
bunch of keeping secrets, kind of jerks, and that's how my family works.
I like
Squat
this
out.
tune. All right, awesome.
Facial recognition.
Where can we find you?
Wait. I want one more thing. New Negroes.
Yes.
I'm so excited. I saw the
Congratulations.
trailer. It's amazing.
Oh,
it
thanks.
looks so like dope and like incorporates so many different like media.
Okay, please tell our fans how,
Mm-hmm.
like what this is because I can't even. Like, it's on Comedy Central.
Yes.
They can watch
Well,
it.
I'll try
Open
to
Mike
keep
Eagle.
it. I'll try to keep it brief, but not so brief. I'll try to keep it brief, but not boxers. It's a show that I started many, many years ago. Actually, I think the first time I did it was at the Bridgetown Comedy Festival, which no longer exists. And so, what the show is a collection of black talent, and the point of it is to show not only how much black talent that there is, but the range of perspectives that black people have amongst themselves, kind of like what you're doing here with facial
Yeah.
recognition.
Wow, that resonates.
Exactly. So it's sort of like, not a monolith, kind of a thing. And so Mike and I, Open Mike Eagle is my co-host. We kind of have a theme for every episode in which we kind of unpack almost in a vaudeville style way. 3 comics. And then at the end of every episode, Mike has composed an original rap song with a guest that also stands on whatever the theme was. And the title comes from a book from the Harlem Renaissance, which was a collection of writers, poets, musicians, essays of black people at that time, essentially talking to, they were like a nexus, if you will.
Yeah.
Perceptions of black people were changing, and I think that we're in that exact sort of place again. You know, the stories about black people became louder than the stories black people were telling, and so that's kind of flipping in this sort of way, and that's sort of what I'm standing on to do, except silly, really, really silly.
It's so cool. The trailer looks so dope. I'm really excited.
Thank you.
for
Yeah,
it.
congratulations.
Yeah.
Appreciate
That's
it.
amazing.
Everybody watch.
So where can everyone who's listening find you online?
Well, I'm at baronvaughn.com. The website has not been updated in 2 years. You're welcome.
Mine's
On the Twitter and the Facebook, the Twitter and the Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, and my handle is BARVONBLAQ. That's Bar Vaughn Black with a Q. Follow me, and I will probably not post much.
And we're Facial Recognition Comedy. FacialRecognitionComedy.com has a link to all our socials. Instagram, Facial Recognition Comedy. Same thing on Facebook, Facial Rec Comedy on Twitter. And I'm Fizza Dasani, at Fizza Dasani everywhere. FIZAADOSANI.
I'm Paula Viganalin. That's PALLAVIGUNALAN. That's my website, my Instagram, my Twitter, my Facebook.
And I'm Zara Ali. You can find me on all social medias and online as Really Zara. Zara is spelled ZAHRA.
And we have a show the second Sunday of every month at Westside Comedy Theater at 9 p.m. We're coming back to New York.
Yay!
May 31st at 11:30 p.m. at New York Comedy Club at the Gramercy location. And we're also coming back to Irvine Improv July 23rd at
glad
8
you knew
p.m.
that.
Yeah,
I
July
like- I got
23rd
it.
at 8 p.m.
I got it,
was
you
looking
guys.
up.
I
Tuesday,
got it.
July 23rd, Irvine Improv. So anyone we know in Orange County, San Diego, and the area, come by.
And we have our show, our second Sunday, as you mentioned, is April 14th, 9 p.m. Westside Comedy. So I think this comes out before that,
I
right?
think so. I don't know, man.
All right. Well, if it doesn't, then it was probably a good
Freaking
show.
Just come.
Should have been there.
Thank you, Baron.
Oh, can you
You're
close
welcome.
us out? What's the song you were singing?
Oh, which one?
My family.
Or close us out with however
I
you
definitely
want.
don't remember how it goes. Well, you Zizu. Well, I don't know what to do. I just just
Put him
got
on the spot.
squaz out, what I do say. Oh yeah. Okay, got weird.